Hello everyone, this is Harry Shah from OUTKREATE. We are a presentation agency that specializes in investor relations, presentations. Today I want to talk about simplifying earnings presentations. Earnings season is around the corner and I thought this topic might be useful. I talk to a lot of investor relations officers. Often I hear they're all trying to make the earnings presentations more effective. When I say more effective, right, it can mean different things to different people. But at the highest level, it's about how can your message come across most effectively? Are you saying the right things in a concise, compelling way? Some others think of an effective earnings presentation as, is it easy to create each quarter? Is it flexible enough? So overall, I do see IR teams working towards making their earnings decks more effective. However, as you start thinking about upgrading your earnings, these are some of the complications I see IROs running into. The first one is not sure where to start. There's a lot you can do. Sometimes you're like, hey, I have my design that needs a big refresh. Sometimes you get into the weeds and worry about improving charts and data visualization. But I would say the best place to start is focus on your structure or outline. Do you have the right slides to get your message across? Do you have the right flow or the outline? So that's the best place to start. That's what I would recommend. And second complication is I can manage for this one quarter, but can I sustain over multiple quarters? And I would say, yep, that's possible. I'm going to share with you a system that should work so that creating earnings every quarter is relatively easy. This is how I'm defining this problem. What is the ideal structure for earnings decks? Can IR teams be flexible and yet be efficient in their approach? And here's the solution. We are going to suggest this structure. I want you guys to start here and then modify as needed. So I'm going to suggest this esoteric sounding structure. It says HBTSOG. Think of it as an abbreviation. I was trying to get clever with naming this structure, but haven't done it yet. So hopefully I'll do that in the future. But for now, just bear with me. There is a structure, HBTSOG. You apply this as a start and then you modify as needed. So let's dive into it further. What do I mean by this HBTSOG structure? Overall, this is the simplified earnings structure that I'm recommending. H stands for highlights. So this should be the very first slide on your earnings deck where you're going over the highlights of the quarter. This is a must-have on every earnings presentation. I still feel there are 30-40% of the earnings decks which still don't start with highlights. So this is a must-have. Start here. Next, I want you to think of B, which is business updates. Cover things like M&A news, maybe new product launches, maybe any updates to your strategy, updates to your transformation you're going through. Everything that gives the investor an idea about your business at a high level, right? The key business updates you want to go next. Then you want to get into your total company financials, which is typically top line revenue and EBITDA driven. At the consolidated company level, what are those financials? Next, I want you to dive into the segments. So it should be a commentary of both business updates as well as top line, bottom line, revenue, EBITDA numbers for each of your segments. Some companies may have 1, 2, 3, 4 segments, so you'll have more content here. But the idea is, hey, you get into segment financials. You can go deeper or not based on your audience's needs, based on the questions you're getting, based on how detailed you really have to be. Typically after segment, we get into other financials, other key financials, should I say. Most companies here are talking about cash flow or balance sheet related KPIs. And then you always end your presentation with the guidance. So this is the structure. You could have more or less sort of slides in each one of these, but the idea is follow this structure and it should do a good job of covering what your audience wants to hear. Highlights, business updates, financials at the company and segment level, other key financials as well. Cash flow, balance sheet details are, some of the KPIs are super important, and then always end with the guidance. So let me demo you that this structure does work by giving you a couple examples. I want to share with you 3 earnings presentations that we worked on with our clients. In each of these cases, the IRO and their team have a lot of great experiences. In each of these cases, we looked at what the peers are doing, what other folks in the industry are doing. We looked at our past work as well. So we've done a lot of homework diligence. There was a lot of push and pull before we arrived at this flow, at this outline in each of these 3 situations. So let me just walk you through those 3 situations, how the HBTSOG framework still applies. Hopefully you see there's proof in the pudding, and hopefully you see this works. So the first example is Hasbro. It's a company at a different stage. They're going through a transformation right now. Their business is challenged, yet the structure works for them. So you can see they start with their highlights. They had some M&A news that they get into. Then they get into some transformation related updates here. Then they are getting into high level what happened in the quarter from a business news perspective. They had these big launches. Then they get into total company financials. How did we do from a revenue and EBITDA perspective? It's all here. Then they have some more total company margin details. And then they get into their segment performance. So you can see for each segment, some news and then some financial numbers. I'm a big fan. I think your audience wants to hear both what's happening in the business and then what are the numbers. Whenever you're giving numbers, also give commentary around the numbers. What are the key margin drivers or what are the key revenue related drivers? Give that color as well. You can see that here. Yep. Then they get into some other total company financials. They're talking about cash flow here and then ending with guidance. Obviously, this is the improved version of the deck. In the before version, the flow was slightly different, but this is the updated flow we have come up with. This is the deck created by the IR team more recently. Another example, again, similar structure, similar flow, but fewer number of slides because this company goes into details for certain things and then chooses or is okay not sharing as much details for some other things. It's all based on what your audience's needs are. So another company, Belden, they're a networking solutions company. Their business is thriving. They're doing really well. They are acing their solutions selling strategy. Their top line, bottom line's growing really well. So look at their flow. It starts with highlights as the first thing. That's what we are recommending. Then gets into some M&A news, gets into some customer related news. That's your B&B. Then total company financials, just the P&L view. They just have one slide that talks about segment. Again, top line, bottom line for each, showing quarter to quarter performance, and then the right amount of commentary that's apt for their audience. Then they get into some other key metrics. Over here, they had a few more slides before. In the simplified version, we ended up with just one slide that talks about cash and cash equivalent, net leverage, and then free cash flow, TTM. And then ends with guidance. After their guidance, they always like to end their earnings call by going back to this value creation framework that they recently shared at their investor day. So it's a great way to sort of remind the audience like, hey, this is what we shared with you. We are progressing well in terms of our strategy. Here we are. Especially their business is doing really well. It's a great way to end the presentation. So HBTSOG, and then at the end, they're talking a little bit about strategy, which makes sense for them. So they modified this slightly and it works. They also have this at a glance information towards the end of their presentation as well. This is good for audiences which are new to the company. They want to know what Belden is at a high level. So I'm a fan of these at a glance slides, but they should be towards the end. If it's a quarterly earnings deck, people are here primarily to learn about your quarter's performance. And so information like this, while useful, I would prefer it to be in the end. I do see some companies starting their earnings presentation with very busy overview slides, very busy strategy, business model slides. Personally, I think those should be in the appendix. Start with the quarters, highlights. Anything that's about your company could be part of your company overview deck or should be in other parts of your investor relations website. To the next example, this is an example of a company. If you look at their last 16 earnings decks, they will all be super consistent. So they have nailed their earnings flow. Their analysts are used to it. I think they find the information very useful. So here they start with their highlights slide, and within the highlights slide, they have their total company financials as well. They then directly dive into the segments. For segments, they are more detailed in terms of the EBITDA, and they have commentary around business news and financial drivers to the business. They get into the next segment. Then they get into the other financials over here focused on EBITDA and cash flow. And then they end with their guidance. So really simple. It works for them every quarter. They have done a great job with this structure. So yeah, there you go. You have 3 examples of earnings deck that follow this HBTSOG structure. In each of these cases, right, you can see like they are all following pretty much the same order. They might have more or less slides in each instances, but they're following the same structure. The chapters of your earnings decks are still the same. There we have it. If you are trying to simplify your earnings presentation, start with simplifying your structure, follow these 6 chapters, build content accordingly. That'll be a great start to help you streamline your earnings. It is scalable. It is flexible. It adapts quarter to quarter. Might be a good place to start as you enhance your earnings. Thanks for watching. If you have any feedback, comments, love to hear back from you.